Good day. How are you today? Today we have a very important person speaking with us. That's Claire Ayer, Senator Claire Ayer from
Betty.
Vermont Senate. Yes.
Good morning.
Morning. How are you today?
I'm well. I'm well. It feels like spring maybe is coming. It's raining, but not too cold, and I don't have to worry about ice for a change.
Yeah, the ice is, and since I've had two hips, it's frightening. The
Yes.
ice is really frightening.
Yes, it is.
And
Yeah.
I never go out with either somebody's arm or the car.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So we have today a discussion to do.
Yeah, lots of things to talk about.
Yeah. So where do you want to start? Do you want to talk with healthcare?
Sure, I always like to talk about healthcare. This is my 4th year chairing the committee.
It's really important.
I think so, and when I took the job as chair of healthcare, of course, we were looking at what people called single payer. We're looking at everybody having healthcare, and we had to back off that because the math didn't work. And some people are pretty upset about it, other people are relieved. But we're still working on ways to keep the cost down. The cost has for years and years gone up way faster than any other inflation. And the cost of medicines has gone up. The cost of insurance is crazy.
Drugs are just...
So, right. So we're looking at, working with the Vermont Care Board, looking at keeping insurance rates and hospital charges and that sort of stuff. What we can control, in part because of federal law, is the price of drugs, which is where we see a huge increase. So right now, the latest thing that we're doing is from the Affordable Care Act, but it's called an accountable care organization, and that means a bunch of hospitals and doctors get together and they say, we can take care of this 100 patients or these 1,000 patients for so much ahead. They look at how old we are and in general what our population is like and so on, and they figure an average. And in that structure, the idea is that they all work together. You know, the physical therapist, the psychotherapist, the surgeons, everybody works together to keep Claire and Betty healthy. Because when we get sick and we have to go to the hospital, it's going to cost them a ton of money, and they only get so much apiece for us. So that's the idea. And you might remember HMOs, how those were so terrible. I don't know, what was it, 15 years ago or so?
Yeah.
The difference is, the idea was companies tried to keep their costs down for health care, but there was no accounting for what kind of care we got. So that's the difference. And one of the ways you're going to hear about it is all of our primary care docs, all the doctors really, are complaining, and rightfully so, that they have so many forms to fill out, 40 boxes to check off about, did you look at their nose, did you look at their toes, did you ask them if they wear their seatbelt? Those are all ways that insurance companies and payers will determine that you and I get good health care. Plus we get all those questionnaires, we fill out maybe 1 in 10.
Yeah.
So that's what's coming, that's what's being organized. And in my committee, we want to make sure that whoever gets together to form these accountable care organizations, ACOs, respect certain rights that we already have. So the right to choose your own provider, the right to confidentiality, the right to a second opinion, those kinds of things. And especially with Medicare, we actually add some rights for people with Medicare. So it could be a great thing, but it's our next big effort to control the cost of healthcare and keep high quality healthcare.
Now, is this...
I know it sounds like a snooze, Betty. Thanks for
no,
staying awake.
I know.
Yeah.
No, I've always been interested in healthcare, and I happen to have very good healthcare, except for bones. Outside of bones, I'm all right.
Yeah, good.
But I wanted to ask you, where is it? Is it in your committee, or has it moved to the floor of the Senate, or Probst, or where is it? In the Senate.
The bill, we're working on a House bill, so it just passed the House, or it may be still in your, but basically it's sort of a Bill of Rights a Bill of Rights for consumers and a Bill of Responsibilities for providers. So we have it in our committee, and we'll try to beef it up a little bit. But you might remember we had a similar thing for single payer. It has to do this, it can't do that, and one of those can't do that. So it can't be a net negative effect on the economy. That's why we couldn't go forward with it when we rolled out the math, especially for small businesses. So
well, it's good that
Yeah.
when a house does things that deal with money, life changes. I mean, more information comes out in March. By that time, we're
that's right.
done.
That's right.
And it's coming over to you, so you have to change it with
Yeah.
the new math and
That's
the costs that come through in March.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we will. There are a few things that house healthcare didn't have any way of knowing that we know now. So we'll add that in. We also passed an opioid bill out of 3 committees in the Senate. It's going to
What
be
3?
on the Health and Welfare is where it started, and it went through Finance. That's the Tax and Fee Committee, and then it went through Appropriations. That's the committee that decides how much money is going to be spent.
And that's
And
now on the floor of the Senate?
It'll be on the floor on Wednesday. It's a good bill. It's not earth-shattering, but it pulls together a whole bunch of pieces that need to be pulled together, especially if you think that, estimates vary, but 60 to 80% of people who are opioid or synthetic opioid dependent got started by taking legally prescribed medication that doctors had prescribed, on the up and up. And it was in Aunt Minnie's medicine cabinet, or your dad had it left over after he had his ACL fixed, or one thing or another. But these legally prescribed drugs are being prescribed in numbers that are higher than most of us need for those kinds of surgeries.
By that you mean that the doctor might say, oh, here's this prescription for 60 days when you really only need it for 10.
Or 30 when you only need it for 3 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You hear all the time about people who have their wisdom teeth taken out or carpal tunnel repairs, and they go home with 30 painkillers, 30 oxycodone or something like that. So,
yeah, they tried to give me. They gave me oxycodone one night,
Yeah.
and I discovered when I had my hips and I was in
Yeah.
the hospital, I said, "Don't you ever give me that again?
Oh.
Don't ever give me that again."
well,
So,
it's a wonderful drug that needs to be
Oxycontin.
used. Yeah, it needs to be used in very specific circumstances
Yeah.
and by people who know how to use it. So I wouldn't want people to think they should never take it.
No.
And the governor proposed that everybody be limited to either 10 pills or 10 days, some kind of limit like that. And what we decided was that we are, in the legislature, we're hairdressers and bus drivers. We're not doctors. So we asked the Commissioner of Health, Harry Chen, to convene the Vermont Medical Society, so that have surgeons and chronic care specialists and cancer specialists and that sort of thing, to look at guidelines that they can put together that everybody can use. And the reason they need them is not that they don't know that drugs are addictive, but back in the early 90s, this company named Purdue came out with oxycodone. And they made a longer acting prescription for it. It's been around since the early 1800s, but it was marketed so incredibly well to doctors and anyone who deals with pain that several things happened. Pardon me. It used to be that only surgeons and cancer specialists and so on back in the early 90s prescribed those kinds of drugs because they were opioids and there were a lot of issues with addiction. But this was marketed so well to primary care docs, among others. And the idea was, back in the early 90s, that with these miracle drugs, which they said were not addictive, that was the research that they showed, and they spent a lot of money at medical schools and medical conferences teaching people that this great wonder drug was not addictive. And because it was so great, there was no need for anyone to ever have pain again from these kinds of surgeries and back pain and neck
from
pain
major things.
Right. Well, but even from small things now. So, the smiley faces at the doctor's office, they say on a scale of 1 to 10, rate your pain.
Yeah.
That's a result of that. It used to be they'd do your temperature, your pulse, your respirations. Now they ask your pain level too. That's all a result of that marketing campaign. With this perfectly safe medication, there's no reason for people to suffer from back pain or joint pain or the things that sort of keep you from functioning normally. So go forward a little bit, and doctors are being sued for not giving people enough pain relief. Go forward another 10 years, and we see that doctors are overprescribing. It's
Yeah.
yeah, because they feel like they have to. So they've already figured it out. They're already on the downturn, with their prescription practices. They're prescribing less, but some guidelines I think would be very helpful to them. And there always has to be the exception for the exception,
Yeah, and so is this organization, HCO, you said?
No, this is the Vermont. This is the Vermont Medical Society.
Medical Society.
They would just convene a group of docs, from primary care all the way through end-of-life care and all the things in between, and try to get a set of guidelines that's very general, that works for everybody. A lot of emergency rooms already have them for people who come in. Oregon and Massachusetts have them. Some docs like them, some docs don't. Anyway, that's where we are with that.
The pain level is a strange thing. My husband and I have a very high pain level. We don't feel pain very much.
Yeah.
I had my hip done, and my brother had his hip done.
Yeah.
He couldn't stand the pain to do the exercises.
Yeah.
So he's in a wheelchair. And I'm up. I stood the pain.
Yeah.
It wasn't very much as far as I was concerned.
Right.
And Advil did it, or Tylenol. And I'm walking around and alive.
He's in a wheelchair?
And he's in a wheelchair.
Oh.
So even though we had the operation and all that, he didn't get up and grit his teeth and do the. It only lasts about 2 weeks.
Well, the reason that
2
docs
days.
need to have a lot of flexibility is because people are very different.
Yes, they do.
It doesn't mean that you're tougher than your brother or more
No.
disciplined than your brother. It just means that you have a different response.
Yeah, well,
So,
it was maybe
yeah.
it was more painful for him than for me.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. There are all these little receptors on your brain that figure out how much pain you have, and everybody's different.
Yeah.
So this is my brain. But they do sort of look like, I mean, if you think about them, you can think about them like Velcro. And when you have pain, it stimulates them and it tells you you're not comfortable, more or less.
Yeah.
So we're doing that. And then there's also a part that says we, as a state, with the programs that we run for substance abuse and chronic pain, we need to really take a serious look at non-pharmaceutical approaches to treating pain. The way it is now, if you went in, Betty, and you had terrible back pain, the doctor could prescribe massage or acupuncture or chiropractic or drugs. And with most people's insurance, the drugs would be completely paid for. Chiropractic would be covered, but there's a big deductible. Physical therapy, there's a big deductible. And massage and acupuncture, forget about it.
As far as being paid for.
As far as being covered. And those kinds of things are things you do a couple of times a week or every week. It's not just take a pill. But we need to seriously investigate that, because that's why we're in the fix we're in. People think that just taking a pain it's the cheapest way and the easiest way to regain function and go on about your business, but it's also the most dangerous way. So we need to give some serious put some serious resources into that. It involves pharmacists more under certain circumstances when they have an arrangement. Say my doctor prescribes some medicines for me. The pharmacist might talk to me in more depth about the drugs I'm taking, but he might also ask for a pill count or that sort of thing, or help adjust the dosage that I take. So that expands the team more. There are a number of things like that in there. We also expanded it to telemedicine. So if I were an addict and I went to see Dr. Betty, who's a specialist in addiction, you get me to a place where you think I'm pretty stable and I could probably go home to some rural area in Vermont. But it would be hard for me to get in to see you. It's 60 miles or whatever. So if there's a doctor's office in my rural place that can be set up for telemedicine, we could do it that way. You could see me, you know me, you could tell by looking at me how I'm doing it in a lot of ways, not always.
Yes, yeah.
So we set up some program for that. A number of things to help us get more, to make the resources we have go further, and to look at ways of avoiding our dependence on these kinds of drugs for treating what's now a life condition for a lot of us, chronic pain and that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. In some places they can get rid of the chronic pain by hip replacement or knee replacement or something. They can get rid of a lot of pain.
Yeah. And these alternative things don't work for everybody.
No.
But in chronic back pain, chronic neck pain, there's a lot of data about chiropractic and acupuncture. There was a great big study in Minnesota or someplace up in one of those states, a long-term study about using acupuncture with knee and hip replacements, and people who had a control group with no acupuncture, some acupuncture, and more acupuncture. And the more acupuncture people recovered better and used fewer drugs. And remember, that's where a lot of people start on addiction, is when they're having pain and they need to have those drugs. So that's what we call upstream. That's our new slang language in the Senate. We try to do things upstream, trying to prevent rather than treat. So this bill has some of each.
Yeah, and that's true. Prevention is true in many, many other sicknesses and diseases and so forth.
The problem is you don't see you don't think if we prevent people from smoking 50 years down the road we're going to see healthier people. It's hard to look at the budget and see much of a difference.
Yeah, because it takes so long to get there. And it's the same with training children, young people, which we did with tobacco. We trained them and taught them how they don't understand that.
Yeah.
Like my friend, she died in her 60s. Even though she gave up last 20 years.
Really?
She gave up the last 20 years with no smoking. She still died, as far as I'm concerned, early.
Well, that is early.
Yeah.
As someone in her 60s, I'm not quite ready yet.
But
that brings up a good point. The opioid bill also has a good amount budgeted in there for public education. And it's modeled. We said, well, how did you come up with these numbers, when we're trying to explain how, to the budget committees? And they said, it's based on the tobacco program, which has been very successful.
Yeah, it's been very successful, except that what do you call them? E-cigars. Or
E-cigarettes.
E-cigarettes.
Yep. That's coming into my committee next week.
I read over the weekend in the New York Times how bad that is. It's really not helping, and it is addictive. I say it's not addictive, but it is addictive. And so I want to also do this with marijuana and opiates, others, to have this education in the schools.
Well, the opioids.
They're taking it at 13.
Yeah.
Age 13.
Yeah.
And it destroys the brain permanently.
Marijuana?
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting that you say that. I saw the study, and it said heavy use.
Yeah.
And I said to an addiction specialist, who's also a psychiatrist with a lot of experience, I said, so what is heavy use? I said, I read in this study it's 8 marijuana cigarettes a day. Don't people just take puffs? A puff here and a puff there? And he said, yes, that's how people usually smoke marijuana. And he said that in his experience, and it was a number of years, 30, 40 years of experience treating addiction and being a psychiatrist, he might have seen 2 people who smoked that much. So you have to be careful about the data. Heavy use,
I don't know that this person in the New York Times was talking about his brother, who got onto it fairly early as far as this guy was concerned.
Yeah.
And he got into it, and then eventually his mind, and he was, eventually he just was so bad, and he had to have help all the time, and his grandma was working
There's-
with him, and
There's no doubt that it's that kids' brains are still developing right up till 25. Actually, the program that we put in place goes up through college, because that's when there's still brain development.
Yeah.
Anyone who's ever had kids knows that.
yeah,
But another interesting fact about marijuana is about people think it's a gateway drug, that it's addictive. And it is almost exactly like alcohol. About 20% of kids get into trouble with it.
but
Gee, I may be mistaken on the number, but I'm not mistaken on the fact that the numbers are about the same. That there are people who, when they're allowed to have these kinds of mind-altering substances, can't make bad decisions one after the other and end up in a bad place.
we heard from a doctor, I forget his name, but how if you mix alcohol and with marijuana, you're in serious trouble.
I've heard that.
Because the marijuana makes you want to go at 12 miles an hour on the interstate.
Oh, we must have had the same witness. Yeah.
And but with alcohol, you may go faster, but alcohol makes you go all over the place. So that's the difference between the driving and
The alcohol impairs your reflexes and your judgment.
yeah, and then you put that with the marijuana, it also impairs a certain amount of judgment. You're in trouble for cars. And the police, at one time, I remember saying they wanted 20, not 20,
Betty.
huh?
That's already true, Betty.
Well, that's why I'm interested in preventive right now at age 13 to have prevention and grow it up. And maybe we can't get all of the people that are older, but if we can get them at the young age and then that moves up.
If you look at the bill we sent you, my committee is responsible for the education part. We didn't want to take the bill. Health and Welfare didn't think they were in a position or wanted to be in a position to recommend or not recommend legalizing marijuana, but we looked at it from a public health perspective. And number one was youth access. Youth already has access, but that was our number one concern. A second concern was public safety with driving, impaired driving, and that.
Deaths in driving.
Right.
Is a real.
Well, we didn't. It's interesting that Colorado was citing a bunch of statistics that an increase from the year before, but they hadn't kept statistics the year before, so I'm not sure how they got that. Interesting what happened.
Washington is. And there's a big increase.
I saw Chris Cole said that in highway. I can't remember if he said in highway deaths or highway accidents that they were seeing a high percent in Vermont already.
Yeah.
So our take in the Health and Welfare Committee was in the Senate, it's here, it's already a crisis, youth already has it, and we need to do what we can to regulate. Our third concern was quality, that people are putting all kinds of other drugs in there, pesticides, and there was some kind of mold that can grow if it's not improperly stored that can make you really sick. So those were our three big concerns, and we said if it's going to be legalized, these things need to be dealt with.
Yeah.
And so once it passed out of Health and Welfare, we never had it. Once it passed out of Senate Judiciary, then we submitted an amendment for education.
There's a new drug coming out. It's fentanyl.
Oh, fentanyl.
Fentanyl.
That's mixed with the opioids.
It is so powerful that when you put the needle in your arm, it goes to your head so fast, and you die before you can get the needle out of your arm. And so police are going and picking up these people, 38, I think, in either New Hampshire, or Maine.
Yeah.
That they didn't understand why the needle was still in there. Because that moves so fast through the bloodstream to your brain that you die. And this one man said, I'd rather die, but I gotta have it.
I did read that they're manufacturing in Mexico, and it's cheaper for them to manufacture that than it is to manufacture and get opioids. So they're hoping to create a bunch of clients here in the United States by adding fentanyl and having people see how much more powerful it is. But the deaths that we've seen from opioids, many of them are from fentanyl, and a lot of them don't even know they're getting it.
No.
They just mix it in, looking to create new customers for this new, cheaper thing they can make in Mexico, is what I read. They probably
Yeah,
make it
they're
other
also
places.
making it in somewhere in New England.
Uh-huh.
And I forget now, but one of the states, one of the towns, I don't know if it's Massachusetts or not.
Lawrence, Massachusetts has a big issue. I don't know that they were manufacturing it, but I did read about it. We must have read the same articles this weekend.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
It's really dangerous. I'm going to bring it to the Judiciary Committee because that's where the bill is now. And I really want to enhance the prescription. I mean the prevention of it, rather
There's a
than
good enhancement program in there, so you'll like it when you
well,
see
take
it.
it. As far as I'm concerned, we'll take everything else out and just leave the prevention part in.
Oh, for marijuana. I'm
Yeah.
talking about the opioids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not much against marijuana. I've been that way for many months.
Yeah.
But I won't vote for the bill unless it's only prevention. So I just want, because we only got about 3 minutes left, I just wanted to say we spent time on the budget this last week and on any taxes and fees bills. We worked from 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock. We worked 12 hours. On Wednesday we worked 11 because we got an hour off for lunch because the cafeteria gave us, supper. Cafeteria gave us, we could buy supper.
Oh,
the second
wow.
night you could buy maybe a pizza or have leftover soup, and that was it. And so we worked from 9 to 9. When I got home Friday, I was one tired person, and then that's too much. And now that next week we have the roads, transportation.
Oh, right.
We have institutions, and we have one other. Can't think of it now. Maybe it's motor vehicles or something. Yeah.
Oh, those are the budgets that we deal with. The separate ones are transportation and institutions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's coming up. That'll probably be late nights. Well, 9 o'clock isn't bad. I've been there at 11 o'clock, and one night in the 80s when Ralph Wright was the speaker, we worked till 6 in the morning, all night. We worked on the last day. We worked till 6 in the morning. I was young then, so I drove home.
Oh, you did?
I almost passed out on the dirt road I lived on.
Yeah. Well, we have worked until almost midnight, just a couple of times.
Yeah.
But we rarely work at night.
Yeah.
We're too grouchy. They can't make us do it. We don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. But sometimes I think it would be good to have a little more discipline and just say, all right, you got to get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to mention that, and so we have to wrap up now. So
Well, it always goes too fast, Betty. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoyed and learned a lot from this particular TV show. Thank you.